Okay, so you've got Andy Reid. You've got Jim Harbaugh now with the Chargers. You still have Sean Payton. I wanted to, and we'll get into the Russ stuff, so let's separate that for a second. But I want to talk about this notion. You and I have sort of dug into this. Is Sean Payton still an elite NFL coach, or is he relying on what he did 15 years ago with Drew Brees to still have this reputation? Jim Harbaugh just won a national title. Andy Reid's about to, or maybe about to, win his third Super Bowl in 5 years. Yet even a guy like Tony Romo is we got to put them all in the same category. Is that fair, Cello?
I would totally agree with Tony.
Or are we kind of living in the past?
Totally agree with Tony.
Okay.
With one caveat. He don't have a quarterback. I mean, you could say Sean's going to get it figured out, but who's your quarterback?
I don't know. It's what you and I have been trying to figure out for a month now.
Maybe,
we will for the next 2 months.
Maybe we're talking differently if the Broncos go on and beat the Patriots on Christmas Eve and they win their final 2 games and maybe they sneak into the postseason and maybe they get ousted early, but you have something to kind of project forward. Man, they got so much better down the stretch, but the opposite happened, Will. They ended up benching Russell Wilson. They put in Sparky, Jarrett Stidham. That's your guy. He's not your guy, but I'll just say that. No spark.
For clarity's sake,
no
not my
spark.
guy.
And I don't really question Sean's ability to coach. I guess what I've been questioning over the past few weeks is you can't make Denver New Orleans. The only constant in life is change, right? And it seems like he's trying to recreate everything from New Orleans here in Denver, and I don't think that's quite possible, especially when with the uncertainty and the unknown of who the hell's the quarterback.
Exactly.
And what route are you going to go?
And that's the million-dollar question Sean has to figure out. And if it is a rookie, Sean has to figure out how to mold a rookie. He's never done that in his career. Even in New Orleans, once Brees retired, it was Bridgewater, it was Jameis, it was a hybrid Taysom thing. It was never, the Saints traded up and drafted a first-rounder and Sean turned him into a star. I guess what just is funny to me, and we'll play this audio throughout the show, but all these folks that Andrew Mason's talking to out there in Vegas, they're all old-time NFL guys in the sense that they've been around the league for a while. You know, the Boomer Esiasons, the Tony Romos, the Matt Ryans of the world. It just feels to me like Sean Payton's living on his reputation a little bit. And what I saw last year, I expected to be wowed by Sean Payton, and I just never was. And I know he won a ton of games in New Orleans, but 90% of those games were with Drew Brees. I just worry that this guy is so well-respected and so lauded around the league. And good for him. He's earned that. It's on his resume. But it just feels like we're living in the past with Sean. And like you said, he's got to prove it moving forward because no one in Denver is ever going to care what he did in New Orleans.
Well, to your point in the piece that Mace put up on denversports.com, Tony Romo goes on to say he adjusts to his quarterbacks. He finds their strengths, their weaknesses, and also the team's strengths and weaknesses and tries to not get those exploited as much. Well, we saw firsthand here last year that there was no compromise, really, other than the fact that all we did here was the playbook was too much for us, so they had to, and I don't know how many times I heard it was like a high school type of an offense.
Dumb it down.
And
if we have to wristband it, we'll wristband it. Remember that quote?
Yes.
Yeah.
I mean, those type of things where you have a guy who is headed to the Hall of Fame in Russell Wilson, you would think, all right, he learns differently or plays differently than Drew. I understand that. But it never seemed like they meshed at all. Name one game where it was like, oh, that was smooth. They may have won or lost, but it looked like they were on the same page. Everything was jonky last year. I mean, other than the time in Detroit where they had more time left on the play clock, which led to the blow-up, it seemed like week in and week out, they were down inside 3 seconds, 2 seconds before they're getting the ball snapped. It doesn't seem like there was a lot of teaching that was going on to make your quarterback feel comfortable in the system he was in.
Yeah, it was herky-jerky, and so this is interesting. You bring this up. So Tony Romo played 3 years with Sean Payton in Dallas when Payton was the Cowboys OC. So, of course, Tony Romo is going to say glowing things about Sean Payton, but again, this was 20 years ago. And Tony Romo, who will be on the Super Bowl call this weekend for more than 100 million people, told Andrew Mason, quote, Sean adjusts to his quarterback, and Sean's going to get the best out of you. I'm with you. What game film did you watch this year, Tony? Sean didn't adjust to Russ at all. Sean wanted to bench Russ halfway through. Sean told Russ to quit texting Drew Brees so much. Sean told Russ at last year's Super Bowl, I don't really want to talk to you because Joe Montana's at dinner with me. As Scott Van Pelt pointed out, Sean Payton never liked Russell Wilson. So while I like Tony Romo and I understand he's going to have a lot of respect for him, I think Tony Romo's speaking nonsense in this story. And that was kind of my ultimate point is Sean's going to adjust to the QB? He sure as heck didn't do it this year. And the way they handled the benching thing got them a lot of bad PR from a lot of real high-up people over at ESPN and NFL Network. And for Tony Romo to come out and just say, yeah, Sean adjusts to the quarterback. No, he doesn't. Sean wants his guy in his system. That's why he benched Russ for Sparky, and Sparky couldn't plug it.
You're exactly right. My fear, Will, is that, number one, if you do take a quarterback early in this draft, you have to hit it out of the park. Has to be the right guy. Because as long as Sean is coached in this league, and I brought up the question, and I've done it numerous times with you, is why would he have taken this job? And he knew what the groceries were. They were laid out in front of him. They were expensive. The Louis was already here, as Dion would say. But there was no change as far as trying to make things work there. And if you go with a young quarterback, what's his tenure here? And how long do we give it before you start to see turnaround? Because I think James pointed out today, what pieces are you going to have to give up to get that guy? And then what is the turnaround time like? What's the timeline for that before you're competitive and being where Broncos country expects you to be year in and year out?
Yeah, and you say, why did he take the job? Well, I think he took the job because he was impatient. And he was on that Fox set just bored to tears, man. And he couldn't do the whole go to work one day a week thing and be an analyst. And he really wanted Brandon Staley to get fired last year because he really wanted to coach the Chargers and Justin Herbert.
And he didn't want to become Cower or Marucci.
Yes.
Or Mariucci or some of these guys that I'll get back. Brian Billick.
Jimmy Johnson.
Brian Billick's another one that I think they all thought, I'm going to get another opportunity. And maybe you're right. Maybe he thought, I'm getting calls this year. There's no guarantee that I'm going to get them next year.
Yeah, and with Bill Cowher, to your point, won Super Bowls in Pittsburgh, but kids that are, 23 years old or younger, they don't think of Bill Cowher as a football coach. They think of him as that old guy on TV.
Yeah.
And Sean didn't want to become that, so he kind of took the Broncos job maybe in a panic. Remember, all the other teams went different directions. Payton was Denver's third choice. They wanted Jim Harbaugh. They flew to Ann Arbor to beg Jim Harbaugh to take the job. He told him no. Ian Rappaport has stood by his reporting that they begged D'Amico Ryans at the last second. He said, no, family wants to be in Houston. Sorry. And Sean was the third choice. So if Sean says, okay, no one else is offering it to me, and I'm choice number 3, I better take this job, to your point. But then we got to go to the Super Bowl this week and hear from all these guys about how great Sean is. And I don't think Broncos fans align with that vision because it feels like a lot of people are just saying this is what Sean Payton did, and I want to know what Sean Payton can do, and no one's provided that answer yet.
Yeah, and that remains to be seen. That's why this offseason, and we've had some crazy ones over the past 7 years, Will, as far as what you're going to do, what your plan of action going to be. This is the biggest one because you brought up apathy the other night, and I think you're exactly right because you're kind of verging on that. And the Broncos, no matter what route they go, you have to hit it. And you have to be able to see something. I'm not saying you're a playoff team next year, but if you do go the young quarterback route, you've got to see flashes that tell you just give them some time. They're building behind it. And if you turn around and it ends up being Carolina, what they went through this year, I don't know that Broncos country can sit well with that.
All right, a lot of good stuff from Mace out in Vegas. Let's hear one more from Tony Romo. This is on a conversation he had with Sean Payton. So there you have it. Sean Payton was instrumental in my career, hence why I'm going to sit here and laud praise on Sean Payton and why I'm going to make somewhat false claims that Sean Payton adjusts to his quarterback when we've got an entire season of film that says that's not the case. So this guy's calling the Super Bowl on Sunday. This guy's voice is going to be in 100 million households across the country, and he still likes Sean. And guess what? That's the way Sean likes it. That I'm still Sean, I'm still the boss, I still got the Super Bowl ring, I've still got it, and I think Broncos country is starting to wake up a little bit to the fact that maybe he's not all he's cracked up to be. It's just some food for thought.
Yeah, I mean, we know that here. You're going to hear a completely different narrative coming from there.
But we lived it every single day. How many games did Tony Romo call the Broncos last year? I don't know if he did one. I know he did the Christmas Day meltdown in Los Angeles with Hackett, the game that got him fired. But I can't think of a Nance Romo game last year. I don't think they were able to crack one on their schedule. So, to be fair to Tony Romo, he's watching a different game while the Broncos are playing.
Well, plus, and I don't think that would have mattered. That's his guy. That's the guy he said he was as instrumental as anybody in his career. And it's not like we're talking about Tony Romo as a multiple Super Bowl winning champion quarterback, but he was a Pro Bowl quarterback, very good. And I think that when it's your guy, the guy that kind of broke you loose, and there was different factors that allowed Tony Romo to start playing for the Dallas Cowboys, but he was his mentor. He's not going to say a bad word about him.
No, Tony wouldn't have the gig he has today without Sean Payton.
Exactly.
Because he never would have been high profile enough to land as the number one analyst on CBS without being the quarterback of the Dallas Cowboys. Why was he the quarterback of the Dallas Cowboys? In large part due to Sean Payton. It's not hard to connect those dots. All right, Andrew Mason also talked with Boomer Esiason. He's got some thoughts on a potential QB. Boomer, thinking Baker Mayfield in Denver. So Boomer wants the entertainment value. He didn't really dive into the, hey, Baker had a great year in Tampa and he's going to make the Broncos a playoff team next year. He wants the two guys going at each other's throats. But he's kind of the first big-name media analyst to go on record with Baker Mayfield and the Broncos, something we've talked about for about a month now. How realistic is that, and is there more to that than just it would be entertaining, but it's actually possible?
I don't think there's any. I'd put it less than 1% that happens for him. One, because of what he just brought up there. The personalities might clash a little bit. I don't think that's as big of a deal. I don't think it would be as need to see, must watch as Boomer laid it out there. But two, the monetary aspect of it just doesn't add up with the amount of money that he's going to get on the open market. The Broncos, they don't have it. And if you want to see the breakdown of the numbers, go to denversports.com. James Marilat put together the numbers, and it'll tell you, yes, there's two different routes you could go, and all of them, they have big financial constraints.
Yeah, that's the funny thing to me is I'm seeing Baker tossed around more and more, and it's like, you guys realize Baker's going to get $40 million. And the Broncos are figuring out how to eat $85 million from Russ, probably spread out over 2 years. So you're trying to eat 40 and then add 40. I'm on record saying the salary cap isn't real, and I say that a little facetiously because there's something that is real there.
Yeah.
You can't take $40 million off Russ and pay $40 million to Baker. It just ain't going to happen. So that's why when people say, well, what about Kirk Cousins? What about Baker? It's like, no. If they go veteran, their ceiling is Mac Jones or Taylor Heineke or Gardner Minshew. And in a perfect world, it's Justin Fields if the Bears decide to move on from him and you can still get him on the second to last year of his rookie deal with the fifth-year option still to come. But for as much as Boomer's just having fun at a little Super Bowl media availability, and Baker would be fun in a Broncos uniform, I do wonder, Cello, and I think you're with me on this, we maybe just need to put Baker to the Broncos to rest.
I agree. And while it'd be fun, I'm not looking for fun. And I don't think Broncos country is either. I think they're looking for them to get back to a competitive, respectable football organization, which they haven't been for the past 7-8 years. So I'm on board with you there. I guess that begs the question after all this stuff is being pointed out to you, the financial constraints, about the personality clashes that possibly could be there. Is there any way that somebody has an intervention? Say someone gets Russ and Sean in a room, sends them to a couples retreat. Well, and they can sing Kumbaya and find out who their spirit animals really are, and can we make this work for a couple more years? Because even if you did say you could pull that off, you could still draft young, and then you'd have someone to fill in when Russ is completely done. And that could be next year, but is there any possibility of that happening?
Well, that's a great question, Cello. And I think you said, is there a person? I think there's only one person on earth. Because I don't think I don't think George Payton has that kind of power. I think it would have to be Greg Penner. I think it would have to be the owner to say, no. We gave you $250 million, Russ. And Sean, we gave you $18 million. And I may come from Walmart money, but I didn't get Walmart money by just throwing around cash carelessly. You two, you're going on your couples retreat, and you're figuring this out, and you're making it work. And we're being a little facetious about the couples retreat part, but I actually do think you're onto something of, is there anyone who could make that happen? I think the owner could. I think the owner could tell Sean, no, I hired you to make it work with this guy. And I think the owner could tell Russ, I've paid you over $100 million for 11 wins. So you're going to earn the rest of that contract by figuring it out with Sean. What are the odds of that? Very low. But you asked me who could do it. I think one person could do it. I think Greg Penner could do it.
It's probably like one of those things, and they've probably looked at the financials. They've done they've had their scouting reports. They know, they have an idea, and it's not finalized because they still have time for it. But you would think if something like that were going to happen, if it could happen, that would happen here relatively soon. It would be like one of those things where a guy breaks up with a girl because he thought the grass was greener on the other side, realized it wasn't, then tries to go mend the fence. Rarely does that work out, but I'm just throwing it out as an option because where the Broncos find themselves, they are severely handcuffed with how you want to put together the team. And not only that, but to say they're going to be good enough to be competitive in 2024, 2025, and beyond.
Yeah, some lovers' regret perhaps that could get ironed out. It's interesting you bring that up because Matt Ryan, former NFL MVP, was up 28-3 in a Super Bowl. Now with CBS, guy's got a heck of a resume. Well, he talked to Mace too, and he has some interesting words on Russell Wilson and Sean Payton. Wow, strong words from Matt Ryan. Hard relationship to repair. Level of trust will never be the same. I mean, it works perfectly into what you were just talking about. Guy dumps girl. Guy tries to go get girl back. Well, guess what? I'm never going to trust you the same way.
Yeah.
And frankly, you already broke my heart. I'm not sure it can be mended by you. It needs to be mended by someone else. In this case, that someone else is probably the Pittsburgh Steelers or the Atlanta Falcons. Out of all the bites we've played so far in these first 20 minutes, Romo, Boomer, Matt Ryan, that one most interesting to me by a guy who was just in the league a year before.
Well, not only that, he thought he could still play late too. So people will kind of crack him for saying, well, your evaluation of yourself wasn't even on point for that. But he did say something interesting in the cut, Will. He said he thinks in his opinion, that he can still play. But he says, but does he have it? That remains to be seen. I didn't get what that meant. Like you said, he could play, but will he have it to play? I don't know if that means a destination or if that just means in Denver. But if you had zero trust with somebody to start, they could build something, because all we've heard really is that these are speculation, of course, but people have said he didn't like him from the get-go. Their personalities didn't mesh from the get-go. So I don't know that there was ever an amount of trust in Russ or, vice versa, both guys. So if they were to try, if there was any way to repair it, maybe it only grows from there. And even if it did, is it enough for them to be on the right track?
Yeah, I don't think it is. And I think Matt Ryan said what we're all thinking in the nicest way possible. Sean doesn't like Russ. Okay, let's just put that out there, plain and simple. The evidence was there literally a year ago, Cello. What I'm talking about here with the, hey, I didn't want to talk to Russ at dinner because Joe Montana was there. Hey, Russ, you're texting Drew Brees too much. Russ was under Sean's skin from the jump. And the way he tried to square peg, round hole it was a lot of evidence right there. And also, Cello, let's be very clear here. If they had not beaten the Green Bay Packers by 2 points when Green Bay was driving to kick a field goal to send the Broncos to 1-6 and beat them by 1 at the buzzer, Russ would have been benched the next day. And this whole 5-game winning streak would have never happened. This whole remove the injury clause or you're getting benched would have never happened. He would have been benched from a football decision, and at 1-6, none of us would have been able to question it because they were 1-6. I think the worst thing that ever happened to Sean Payton was beating the Green Bay Packers. And you remember, that was the game where he's talking about how he's all ticked off driving around the sushi restaurant because he's not happy with how they won. Deep down, he was driving around real quick, he was driving around in circles in the sushi restaurant because he knew he couldn't bench Russell Wilson after a win.
Oh, he could have. And knowing
That's a tough sell to the room, Cello. That's a tough sell to the room.
I mean, if he hated it that much then, and knowing what we know of the guy so far in his short tenure in Denver, I don't think he hesitates to pull the trigger then.
I think if the Packers kick the walk-off field goal, of course not. I don't think he's been in this league too long. You can't bench the starting QB after a win. That just doesn't fly in a locker room of 53 dudes and 12 practice squad guys. That's a good way to lose the locker room as a head coach 7 games into your tenure.
Well, it wasn't that bad, but Mike Shanahan did something similar with Jake Plummer.
Yeah, Mike's resume here was 2 Lombardis, 2 rings.
Well,
Mike had a little more clout in Denver than Sean
I'm not saying
does.
it was the right thing, because I think if we look back, he lost the locker room when he did that.
Sure.
You know, there's too many guys offensively and defensively saying, hey, we're still 7-4. We have a chance at the postseason. What are we doing? It's a little bit different if you're 2-6 and you narrowly escaped a win at home against Green Bay, who was struggling at the time. If he hated it that much that he was doing that around the sushi restaurant, then I don't think I would have put it past him then to have made the move. Maybe you're right. Maybe it's like it wasn't a glowing victory. It wasn't like, man, he just saved his job.
No, there was like a weak holding call on the Packers that changed that drive to go win the field goal.
Yeah.
And then it was P.J. Locke with the interception to seal the game, I believe, because Kareem Jackson got himself ejected for a second time. So it just doesn't sit well with me that Sean Payton is continuing to get all this praise because of what he did in the past. I want to see what he can do with the Broncos and do in the future. The Romo comments do rub me the wrong way a little bit, and I'm glad we got to the Matt Ryan cuts because I think it's the most honest one there.
Yeah.
They can't make it work. And Russ will be released, and Russ will find a new team, and the Broncos will pay him a lot of money, and Baker Mayfield's not an option. I think we came to a lot of good conclusions in the last 25 minutes. I think they're all just kind of depressing conclusions.
That's been the problem, and that's what's going to be the problem until we start to see moves be made to what the plan's going to be. And I think day in and day out, if you're a fan of this franchise or you're a member of Broncos country, day in and day out, you have a different shiny toy on the want list, do you not? Like, who's your guy today? If you go young, who do you want?
Well,
and Caleb Williams is out.
Am I allowed to dream big? Caleb Williams. Patrick Mahomes 2.0.
Okay, he's out. Who's the other one that you would say?
I want Jaden Daniels, and I would bend over backwards to get him.
That's your guy.
Yeah, of course. Okay. But you probably have to get to 3. And how realistic is it to get to 3?
Mine's Drake May.
Rumors he might be falling.
I know, and I brought that up the other night. There's conflicting reports constantly, but when you hear Joel Claddon with Stink and Evans this morning say he's Josh Allen but a better passer.
That's high praise. I take that.
I like Joel, and I was like, dang, man, you're throwing that out right now, and it's February 7th?
Yeah.
We haven't seen Combine. We haven't seen Pro Day. We haven't – none of that. This is all based on film, and I trust Joel's analysis of it. But if that's the way you're going to label him, count me in.
Yeah.
Do what you need to do to go get that dude.
Hey, please help us grow our Denver Sports YouTube channel. You can find us on there. If you could like, comment, share, and most importantly, subscribe. Hit that notification bell so you never miss a video. Denver Sports on YouTube.